Oh my goodness, technology is wonderful, isn't it? Hey there, this is Matt Petrowski, and this is take number 2 because I record these live of this particular topic, creating records number 2. Stick with me, we'll be on my desktop in just a few. All right. Wow. If anybody just got finished watching the previous version of this video, it'll be deleted and you won't find it on YouTube because I'm going to get rid of it. The funniest thing just happened. So here's a story about recording videos live with YouTube. If all of your stuff looks like it's working and you can't figure out what's going on, look at your actual microphone button. What happened was my microphone got twisted, and when it got twisted, the little button under here got mashed under the actual holder here, and because it got mashed just as slightly pressed in, completely muted out my volume. Now I can see that I'm looking at my volume here, and the volume's actually coming through, so lesson learned, check your volume. All right, so you came here to learn about FileMaker, and this is going to be a retake. The other video is probably worthless because you can't follow along with the video, hence this one right here. All right, in the show notes or in the description down below, you are going to be able to find a link to the file that we're following along for this particular video. I don't know that I'll be able to get everything exactly the same, but we will do our best in order to do that. Now, we have been going through this time tracking database, and we are using this as the database that you will download, that you'll have access to. The reference database that we are using sometimes is FileMaker's own time billing database. And then we will also have as my reference database, a database that I basically had created for myself, but I simply haven't finished it out. And the problem we're solving is this one right here. Well, the first problem we're going to add in all the features is basically making it so that it only shows my active projects. Now, yesterday in the previous session, and I'm so paranoid right now, I'm going to keep looking and make sure that volume is continuing through. Of course, I'd have to twist the microphone here. What we learned in the previous lesson is we learned that we had to set up some additional relationships in order to have this type of structure right here, where we've got a popover that I like a little bit better in terms of a user interface in order to be able to actually add records very quickly. But there was a comment that was made in the previous on the previous video about this structure right here. When we take a look at our defined database, the problem that was mentioned was this type of relationship right here. When we're looking at this, this is a Cartesian join, and the item that he had mentioned was he was taught in early, this was back when databases were even less performant. I think I can use the word performant, where basically a Cartesian join is if you have 50,000 records on one side and 10,000 records on the other side, and you cross join all of them, it's all permutations of all different joins across all of those. So it's 50,000 times 10,000 gives you 500,000 different possible records that would show. In FileMaker, we're not too worried about that because of the fact that these are global fields as part of our key, so we're connecting nothing to something, or basically nothing to very little. So we're not really paying a big performance penalty here when we're using this, but the cost that we do have is we are adding additional table occurrences. But the takeaway that we'll have in this video is no matter what you're adding something somewhere into your database. So here I'm adding additional table occurrences that I now have to manage on my graph. But as we're going to learn in today's lesson, there's an alternative way where these would not have to necessarily be connected. I would be able to take my filter time and reconnect it over directly to my layout time if I wanted to actually use that for the purpose of the relationship filtering out records. Of course, I can always use a find. So in essence, I would be able to, after today's lesson, get away with just having these two table occurrences alone. And that's using a FileMaker 16 feature that's new, which is card windows. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into layout mode on this particular layout. And I'm not going to take a copy of this particular button because I know that it is a pop-up, or I actually learned from the previous time that I shot this video that it's a pop-up, and I want just a regular button. So I'm going to take a copy of that one, and I'm going to call it projects as well. Now what it's going to do is we're going to use a single step. Now remember, every time that we use single steps, we can always convert those single steps to new scripts. FileMaker gives us the option right here by simply choosing to convert to script. So this is just something that I do as I develop. If I can get away with the single step, then I try to use the single step. Some developers, they will automatically, by default, go for the new script. My argument is if you're always adding more stuff, it's more and more stuff to manage. So we're going to simply add a new window. This new window is going to be a card window. Now the card window completely changes how you can do a ton of different things in FileMaker. We created related records through relationships, and we had to add a number of things. Well, in order to show in that popover, we had to add two table occurrences. One was to show the list of possible projects so that you could select from them. But the second was so that you could actually add the additional record. And that's because you can't have the ability to create a related record through a Cartesian join particular relationship. It just wouldn't make sense. But here, as I mentioned, we would be able to get away with not even having those extra table occurrences or the relationships, even though they're very lightweight, by using a card window. Now it's worth noting that we've always been able to have, say for example, a floating document window, or not a floating document window, is it a dialog? One of these, there we go. This window, a window that is modal to the application. So choosing a dialog window was basically a window that comes up in front of the window that the user is looking at, and it locks the user into that window. And they really can't get rid of it. So FileMaker took this one step farther and gave us this additional option of a card window. And the distinction between the two is that the card window does not actually show the title bar and is actually married to the parent window. Now the window name that you use with a card window really doesn't matter. You could use anything. In fact, one of the things when I'm scripting a card window is I can use a getUUID because it's just a temporary string that we use that somewhere else later down in the script I can actually get rid of that window. Now we saw in a previous video where I used a variable to set the window name first, capture that window name, then use the variable in all of the steps. And we'll see that when we get into the scripting section of videos. But for right now, I'm just going to call this new project. And I am going to leave the close and the dim parent window turned on. The layout that I'm going to use is going to need to be a separate layout. Now here's where we come to what I was just stating about the fact that no matter what, in order to accomplish something, you're going to be adding elements and code. So when we look at the define database, I added, well, let's be honest, I added the globals table so that I could get the user interface global fields out of my data tables. That's just a preference thing. So we can't really count this table occurrence against us for using the popover. But for using the popover, we did have to add these two table occurrences and this one field of create. So we had to add something to our database in order to facilitate the feature. But if we didn't want to use all of these and we didn't want to have the Cartesian join from here to here, even though it's ultra lightweight and there's no performance penalty that we're paying, we would be able to just have the two and use a card window. But it requires us to add something. That something is a new layout. So when we go to define, to manage layouts, one of the things that I mentioned is in the previous cut of this video, I'm still so surprised that I shot an hour worth of a video and I didn't notice the switch. So funny. I showed a little bit of how I start to organize things because this is starting to get a little bit convoluted and I want to be able to know that things are going to be manageable. So I start to add things specific to how I organize. Now the first folder that I'm going to have is a developer folder. The next folder that I'm going to have is an application folder. Now you could call this a UI folder, but I just call anything that's related to the application. Maybe there's things that the users don't see within the application folder, but for me, the application is typically what's exposed to the users. So then within that, I would actually create a folder called layouts. Those are things that users specifically interact with. And then I create also a folder for utility layouts. Now you notice what happened as I was creating those folders. Notice that whatever folder was selected, FileMaker puts that folder within that folder. So if I really wanted utility to actually be within the application folder, I should have selected it first, then go to my new folder. But of course, there's really little consequence to dragging things around in order to get them to be how I want. So far we only have one layout. It's that one right there. The rest of these are pretty much my developer tables. In fact, I should have taken the time to rename my developer tables. Let's go ahead and do that now. As I bring that up, I'm on my graph and I'm going to rename these. I use the prefix of the @ symbol. I always like to be able to see what's going on with data behind the scenes. So I've got those 3 developer tables now, or excuse me, table occurrences, not developer tables, raw tables, developer table occurrences, which are going to match with, as I get the wrong key right there, with these right here. So I'm going to put those into my developer. And I think child time goes in there, but I'll have to manage that. I know globals is going to ultimately end up being a 1 as well. So as I double click to rename that one, I don't have a globals table yet, but I'm sure I will get one. So let's make our new layout that we need. Now, what I had previously shown is that with a card window, the card window is going to be based off of context. With a card window can be completely separate, has nothing to do with the relationships that you have. You can show any other layout tied on to any other table occurrence in all of FileMaker. That's the biggest benefit of card windows. It's completely separate from your current context, or it can be in your current context, or it can be in a completely different context with a completely different set of relationships. So if I select projects here, one of the reasons that I have developer tables is it's a list of all of my core tables. I can always choose my option right here, which I don't think it's going to show unless I zoom out a little bit, of select tables with the same source. So with that one key right there of Command U, I can come in, select my developer table, Command U, and I can see all of the other options that I currently have for the projects table. Well, now is when I get to make the choice. Do I want to have my card window based off of one of these table occurrences because it provides access through relationships to some type of data that I want to access? And would it make sense? Because I might confuse myself later on down the road when I look at the list of layouts, once they get to be 50, 100, or however many there are. Why am I using the create projects? Why do I have this layout here? What is it tied to? And so what I will tend to do is I will segment things out in FileMaker so that they're specific. And I ask myself, what's the cost to what I'm doing? Is there a cost to me actually saying this is a card window table occurrence for projects? And ultimately the answer is really no. And for the purpose of this video, we're also learning that what we can do is with this window or with this separate, we can wire up any other relationships that we want, or we can just use this standalone as is, just a way to access the projects. So we need the layout now based off of that table occurrence. We go into manage layouts. We're going to create our new layout, and with that here, we can select that table occurrence that we had created. Now again, I'm going to want to start to rename these, get them cleared up. I can see right here, I just option dragged that layout and made it layout time 2. This needs to be named something else specific to how it's going to be used, like card window, or create, or globals, very obvious, or layout, or portal. All of these prefixes make it very easy for me to understand what's going on. But I know that I'm making a card window based off of this, and I'll simply just call this new projects. Now I ask myself at this point in time, do I want to call this new projects? Is it only for new projects? Am I going to use the form view or am I going to use the list view? And many times for me, I'm editing projects. So whether I create something new and edit it, or whether I go to find something old and edit it, edit for me works a little bit better. So I call it edit projects. and that is, you might consider it a utility layout. I just put this here to show you one of the ways that I organize things. But this is a user interface layout, so I'll probably leave it here within layouts. In fact, as this evolves, it evolves according to the areas of use within the solution. So I would create a subfolder called time tracking, and then maybe customers, and then maybe companies, and then maybe invoices, and keep all related layouts tied within that one folder. And I do the same thing with scripts. So we are here on the layout, and what we're going to do is we need to add to it the text. Excellent. We are recording and actually getting the audio out. So we'll put in our projects here, and I didn't finish typing that out. We're going to go through all kinds of stuff once we get to actually the user interface part. In fact, I love showing that, all of the user interface stuff, and we are going to zoom this out now. Of course, we need a couple of fields on the layout. I'm going to get rid of the footer, and I'm going to scroll the body up. Now again, we need to go into browse mode, which we do temporarily here because FileMaker in its infinite wisdom chooses to give us all views, and that's not what I want. I want to actually have the ability to change that. I'm going to go up to the layouts and change it with the layout setup. As I bring that on screen, I'm going to choose the views that I have right there. And again, I'm going to uncheck form and uncheck table. Now, of course, I could always choose to use multiple views on a given layout. I'm going to show you in the future videos about user interface design that I will sometimes use both of them, form and list, switching between the two views for a particular layout. I like to multi-purpose my layouts. But in this case, we'll just choose list. You could choose form, and we'll go with that. So now that we've got that, we need to put the fields on the layout. We will do that by dragging them right here. And I, of course, am going to add the name, which the user will need to access. We'll clean it all up when we get to the user interface section, and the active, which is probably going to be a Boolean checkbox right there. All right, now the cool thing about these particular windows is that as long as they are big enough to show what you want, you can position them anywhere you want within the window. So as we go into browse mode, we've got our nice little list of the card window that we're going to use. We can switch over to the application, to the layouts, to our main layout, and now finally wire things up. You know, one of the good things about having to do a retake is the first one actually acts as a rehearsal, and you get the second one done through a lot quicker. So double click on our projects button, which is going to become just simply our new window. We already have that, but now we need to target the layout that we created. So as I zoom out here and double click this and click on the little icon for the settings, I can now specify the layout that I want to use, and that is going to be, as I choose layout, my edit projects. So with the edit projects, I'm going to not mess with all of the settings for right now, but recognize that with a card window, you can put the card window anywhere you want on the layout. You can even actually put it outside of the parent window. The one option we need to be aware of is this close box right here. If you uncheck this and you don't put something on the layout, then the user will be locked into the window and they will not be able to get out. You might be able to use Command W or Control W, but I'm not going to test that right now. But if I'm going to leave this checked for right now, we'll see how we solve that with a simple button. So that's really all that's needed. So if you're watching this video and you watched the previous video and you are thinking, okay, is the trade-off a single button with a single step with one additional layout as opposed to adding 2 additional table occurrences and doing it within a popover? The answer is yes, you are correct. That is all you have to have, is that one card window. Of course, it only comes with FileMaker 16 and later, so if you have an earlier version of FileMaker, then you are pretty much going to be using the pop-up method with the additional table occurrences. But when we go into browse mode now, we can see that we don't have the same problem that we currently have. With our popover, I can't actually create new records. I can't get into these fields until the relationship is satisfied. And a relationship is not satisfied until there's something on both sides of the relationship. And the only way that that happens is if I happen to have a record that's showing. In fact, if I create a new record here, the relationship is now satisfied that the globals, the value that is or would be in the globals field, allows me to get into these fields. So that's a bit of a downside to the particular relationship technique that we've got right here. I would actually have to create those records. And it doesn't really matter whether records are in the table or not. It's whether a record is active, because as I omit this record, I'm going to do that with Command or Control T. You'll find under the menu command of the records that you can actually omit a record, omit multiple, or you can show omitted, which will flip the found set. We'll have to take a look at that when we look at doing finds. So even with it omitted, the relationship is now not satisfied and I can't click into this field. So that's a bit of a problem. I'd have to solve that with a script. Click the plus button or something that allows me to actually get in the field. I can't even just get in the field to run a script trigger with this particular situation. But of course, that all hinges on the fact that if I was never showing any data. So I'll have to solve that problem if I want to use this, and I do. Otherwise, our alternative is we don't have the extra relationships and we just use a card window. We can still create a new record. Now, whether or not all of these show up right here is completely up to us. How they show, we can see that this can be scrolled, but we don't have a button here, so it's a really easy solution for us to solve by clicking an add with a new record. We do have our close right here, which unfortunately is making it really junky. We'll fix that. I'll close the window right now. Let's go fix our layout with Command-Shift-L, open up our layouts, open up that window side by side, add our plus and our close window. Two of the options that we have. Again, super easy to solve. We just add a button right here. We click the little icon. We're just going to click the plus, maybe right there, and we are going to set a single step. Again, working with single steps and knowing that we can always convert to script is a great way to go instead of jumping for the script right ahead, because remember, you're going to have to manage it. All we want right here is a new record. It's a simple step. In fact, I've always wondered, it would be interesting to program a FileMaker database without creating a single step. I've tried it. You almost always need a script, but it is a fun way to go. All right, so I took a duplicate of that button because I am going to now make this a close option. I'll choose the close right there. I'll make that one a little bit larger. Again, it's going to be a single step. And what are we going to do here? We're simply just going to close the window. All right, so we've got that in there. Now, one of the things that I showed is this feature right here with the inspector showing. One of the things that we can do is we can make this the same style, because all of the different styles for a button are a bit of a hassle to manage. So the default style for the button here, I want to actually give the fill a none. I want to make the icon a particular color. I want to switch it to white. I want to go back now, there's a lot of switching when you're theming things, to the line and turn the line off. And once I've set all of these settings, I'm going to use these little options right here to copy and paste the style. Normal has everything that I want in terms of the styles. I don't want to go individually do that for the hover, the pressed, and the focus. So I'm just going to click the little eye dropper here to copy the state style as it says. And I'm going to go to hover and paste and go to pressed and paste and go to focus and paste. And then I would save the style and then save the theme, and it would be what I want. And now I can just change it so that it does something when I actually have one of the states the way that I'm working with it. For example, pressed. So on the pressed, if I select the button icon and say, okay, now you can go orange, that's what I want to have happen. So now that we've made our changes to our layout, we've got the ability to create a new record. I want that to be a little bit bigger, that plus right there. What I'm able to do is, that's what it's going to look like when it pops up. I'll keep it off to the side, hide that. Let's just take a look at it. All right, I've got my close button right there. So close should close this window. It in fact does. I'm safe to take off the close now. I go into layout mode, double click my projects, click my single step, click the little gear, take off the close. Now I'll take off the dim parent and I'll talk about it right here when we go into browse mode. So here's our choice. Do we want this right here where we can This to me is a little bit more fluid for the interface. I like that I don't get a disruption. With this, I feel like, at least when it dims, I'm taking into a different mental state when I'm working with this. Of course, maybe the dimming doesn't bother you. For some reason, it just does. I like the flow of that. Notice I can't click here until this window is gone. That also can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. You can see right here that I can quite easily click to add a new project. And I can add as many as I want. Another and more. FileMaker will keep doing that. Now, clearly, I get to control the flow of how things work. When I click this, I could use a script. I could omit all of these so that you only see the first record. I could do it in form view instead of list view. I can switch between the two. I can put an edit button here. I have full control over this window. Likewise, like the popover right here, I can actually move it up relative to the button if I want to and actually have it show up looking almost exactly like a popover without actually showing the little triangle that shows up on the popover. Now, here's the one thing I don't like about card windows. I do not get to control the shadow. I do not get to control the corner radius. In fact, if they had given me those two options, I would probably start to make faux popovers just because they provide you with the completely different context here. This is an amazing addition for FileMaker 16. They just need a few more options. The ability to control the shadow, corners, and then the ability to get a little bit smaller. In fact, if you can't get smaller than a certain height, which is really sort of crummy, because if we were able to not dim the window or dim the window and get as small as the height of this bar right here, we would be able to do a ton of new cool user interface things. But FileMaker has some limitations, and it's those. You can't control the shadow, the corners, and you can't get a height smaller than, I forget what it is off the top of my head. But hey, I'll take the downsides for this degree of flexibility. Moving forward, FileMaker's card windows really are a replacement for a lot of other alternatives. As I stated, we basically get to not have these if we don't want to have them. In fact, all of the rest of this could go away, and we would basically just be left with this right here and a dedicated table occurrence for the card window and one extra layout. So in that regard, that would be really good simplification, and I should consider it for my solutions. But like I say, I just like this flow. I like to be in the user interface, select my project, edit it, click to add one, be able to check active here, but I could do it in a card window too. So this is just another way to create records, and I hope it's helped you out. We'll take a look. I didn't have any questions on the previous video. Don't know that I will on this one. But I want to show you something just before I switch over to that, just as an encouragement, because I am doing this free on YouTube and I need some way to make my money. That just happens to be through the magazine. Let me open a file that I was showing in the previous edition of this video that was really pretty cool. You know, FileMaker implemented into the user interface, they implemented some ways to really style and control a lot of elements. They use CSS, which was brilliant because it's a standard and the web is full of all kinds of great CSS. But the problem that FileMaker has is the engineers are implementing all kinds of other things, and of course they have limited resources. So it's not like they can spend as much time as possible on the inspector. So there are some things that just aren't possible to do. One of them in particular is a tab panel that looks like iOS. So currently the only method that developers have for doing that is to add a tab control, which is typically what you want. And you have a few tabs, 1, 2, and 3. And then what you'll do is you will shift these tabs by aligning their justification so that they're off to the right. And then what you can do is you can actually drag these off to the non-visible portion of the layout. And that was a little bit of a drastic drag there because of my overzealous screen scrolling there. All right, so let's just move this off screen. So this is a UI trick. I'm very excited to show you all of my UI tricks. I've shown them at DevCons and all over the place. But this is a tab panel with the tabs that are off screen. you can target a particular tab using one of FileMaker's script steps, go to object. So typically a developer is going to have to put a button bar above this in order to make it look like iOS. That's really janky to me. I don't like that. And it's just all a byproduct of the fact that we can't actually control the way that a tab panel looks when it comes to iOS. That is, of course, unless you're a subscriber to ISO FileMaker Magazine or FileMakerMagazine.com. Watch this as I make a selection here on this little tool that I created that I'm providing to subscribers. Now, this is a hackish way to do this, but there's a native way where you can actually put a block of text on a FileMaker layout, and you can right-click on that block of text and actually change a color value, such as change the border color to orange, and then let's just pick some other god-awful color like purple for the inside. But all I have to do is click this Set iOS Tabs to Clipboard, come over to my layout, paste, and what I get is well, that was a tab panel pasted within a tab panel. Let's move it off to the side here. We'll talk about containment. There you go. Look at that. That is a tab panel that is native, if I create a new record, that looks like iOS widgets. So this is just one of the many, many things that I talk about over at FileMakerMagazine.com. I give the code for free. I explain it fully and teach you how to use what's going on. In fact, this one's really complex. But if you want to hack objects like this within FileMaker until the developers of FileMaker can get to the point where they expose more of the controls within the inspector, I mean, heck, maybe they'll never implement this, but this object is a completely valid object. In fact, FileMaker, their own themes do things that you can't actually do yourself within the inspector. And that's just because they can actually set things up with controls in ways where they are able to do that. For example, the distance between tabs. You'll notice that there's no control in FileMaker currently that allows you to control the spacing between tabs. You just get what it comes. Well, there is a value that does control the spacing. You can see that I can get them right up close to each other. And this is just a cool little picker widget. You know, you want one with green border color and blue? Hey, make your choice, come over here, paste it in, and you're going to save those styles, and you're going to get that. And of course, you can change the text and everything. It doesn't have to look this awful. You can make it look how you want. But this is just one of the things that I do over at FileMakerMagazine.com, and it's my encouragement to you to go over there. That's what helps me and allows me to do videos like this for free on YouTube. So let's take a look, see if we got any questions, and yeah, now that people can actually hear me, right? All right, welcome back. Sound, there we go. The sound is perfect. Thank you. Oh gosh, guys, that stupid button. It was just one little button. All right, what am I using for screen recording? There is a program called OBS, which is a free and openly source available solution that is brilliant for being able to broadcast to YouTube, Facebook, anywhere where they do live streaming. And you just set it up. And make sure you don't mash your button on the on the microphone. All right, so we've got no questions today. So that means that we are going to switch here. Oh, so much better having good sound. If you're interested in getting notified of these videos via YouTube when I am going to broadcast them, you can do that with that link right there. It'll pop up on the screen. Of course, the next video in this series will come up right there. As always, much luck with your own FileMaker database development, and until next time, happy FileMaking.